Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Harry Lausen series, and this is my chess YouTube channel, grecochess. We're going to continue with the coverage of the Connecticut Chess Open tournament that took place 2 days ago at the University of Bridgeport in Connecticut. Today, we're going to describe my second game. In the first game, if you see the video, I started with a win. But before we actually go to the game, let's look at the details of the tournament once again. 4 rounds, meaning every player was expected to play 4 games. And the players were divided in various sections, as you see here, and I'm going to explain to them. The open, meaning every player was eligible, and usually only the best would participate because they are not eligible for the other ones. The next section was the under 2100, meaning your rating had to be below 2100 to be eligible. Under 1700, that's where I participated. Your rating had to be below 1700. The under 1200, the under 700, and the NER for players that were not rated. Says here NE rated only. Now, the time control, that's the next detail. For my section and for the higher sections, it was G45 plus 10. What does this mean? It means that when the game starts, players have 45 minutes on their clocks. Of course, when your opponent is thinking, your clock does not move. When it's your turn to move, from the moment that the opponent has touched the clock, meaning they have registered their move, your clock starts going downwards. But once you complete your move, you get another 10 seconds. It doesn't matter if you used much less time, meaning if immediately you play your move and you hit the clock, you get another 10 seconds. This means that the game could go on for very long. That is about the details of the tournament. And before we start the game, let's look once again at some pictures I took from the playing hall. The first one is as you enter the building, the registration, you see the two statues, left and right, University of Bridgeport, the logo, and the registration chair, the various sections with the names of the players. Players would check on the list to make sure that their names were properly listed. This is the one photo, and the other photo is inside the playing hall. And of course, I took it before the tournament started. That's why you see it's empty. An interesting detail is that on every table you see the chess board with the pieces. And later on, before the games would start, the organizers would add the clocks that were correctly set so that they reflected the 45 minutes with a 10 seconds increment. And I would really like to thank the organizers for taking care of these details. One of the headaches of the players is boards and clocks, and do they work or not? Are they correctly set or not? And there are only 2 tournaments have been that the organizers take care of this detail. The one is Cheshanity in Long Island, and the other was the Connecticut Open. Thank you very much, organizers. It made the players' life so much easier. Enough about the preliminaries, and let's go now to the actual game. First, let me share with you who was my opponent. My opponent, as you see here, is Ron Maymin-Tzur. Let's look at her rating. It is 1424. And she belongs to the 80.7 percentile, meaning she's better than 80.7% of the members of the United States Chess Federation. Compare this with my numbers. I'm 1582, and you see that the published one, meaning October 1, it's going to be listed as my published rating, as the current published rating. It's going to be 1609. This is after the 2 tournaments I played in Albany for the New York State Chess Championship and later on at Chessanity. And I'm in the 87th percentile, which means that the odds are on my side. I should be the favorite. But this doesn't mean too much. Let's see what happened in the actual game. And we're going now to the board of chess.com. And once again, let me repeat how this is working. Let me enlarge the screen. On the left half, you're going to see the move. I'm going to be entering the moves one by one from the beginning until the end. On the right half, below the word analysis, you'll see the computer evaluation. Positive number means white is better. Negative number means black is better. While the computer shows if a move played was the best or not, if not, which would have been the best move, and what are the best three options for the other player whose turn is to come. I had the white pieces as I mentioned, and Ron had the black. I start with my pawn go to e4, and she replies with a French defense, the pawn goes to e6. I continue the standard way, pawn goes to d4, and she places her other pawn to d7. I place my bishop on d3, I've done it many times. It's a book move, they're not the most popular. The most popular is either to advance the pawn to e5 or to take out the knight either to c3 or to d2. D3 is the next one in order, and I like to play to somehow have possibility of surprise. And Ron, instead of taking my pawn on e4 like most of my opponents had done in the past, he places her knight on f6. I move my pawn to e5, and she moves her knight to d7. And now I develop my other knight, goes to f3. At this point, I abandoned what's called the book, the opening theory. It's an excellent move, not exactly the best, but it's a playable. And Ron places her pawn on c5. My pawn goes to c3. She places her knight on c6. I castle. Pawn goes to a6 for black. My rook goes to e1. Queen goes to b6. This is done in order to have better control of the d4 square. Now, if you see my pawn at d4 is attacked 4 times. Let me count again. Once by the pawn, once by the knight, once by the queen. I'm sorry, it's attacked 3 times. It's defended only twice by the pawn on c3 and by the knight on f3. And in order not to lose the pawn, my bishop goes back to c2. Ron will take my pawn, and I take it back. And at this point, if you see, I have an advantage of 1.16. And one move for Ron to complete the first 10 moves, queen goes back to c7. I have an advantage of 1.13. Of course, most of it is because I started first. But until now, things seem to be going nice for me. Let's see how things will continue. I develop my knight to c3. And Ron sends her pawn to b5. The idea is to attack on the queen side and threaten my knight on c3. And this is inaccuracy, says the computer, and gives you an advantage of quite large, 177. Next move, I don't want her pawn to come to b4, so I defend with my pawn going to a3. Her knight goes to b6, and my knight goes to g5. Which is the computer want to attack the pawn on h7, and if she defends it, then at least she made a weakness on the king side, assuming she castles king side. Of course, there's always the possibility I take it and then she pushes the pawn to g6 to block my bishop. Then the bishop takes g6, take back, and Although I got 2 pawns for the piece, I weakened the king side. But Ron will not give me this opportunity. Goes to h6. My knight goes to h3. Why to h3? And let's see what the computer says. It says it's the best because I want to keep the f3 free for my queen, the knight to go to f4, and that's why, in spite of what they say, a knight on the rim is grim and ready for the trim. I send my knight to h3. And Ron places a knight on a5, preparing counterplay on the queen side. I decide to start attacking. Pawn goes to f4 and also defends the pawn on e5. Knight goes to c4. Inaccuracies that the computer gives me an advantage of 1.40. I want to strengthen my pawn at a4. The computer would like me to push the pawn on f5. But then pawn takes it and I cannot take it because the bishop. In order to be able to do it, my rook goes to f1. Inaccuracies is a computer. And now Ron will win a pawn, or we'll see. Knight goes to a3. And look what's going to happen. If I take it back, she takes my knight for free. And I found a way to avoid it with my knight going to d5, meaning both sides will lose their knights, but at least I have not lost a pawn. But the computer thinks a mistake. For the first time ever, the advantage goes to black. But let's see what happens. Knight takes my knight. My pawn will take the knight. And material-wise, at least we're equal. I avoided being a pawn down. But the computer gives an advantage to black 0.75. After the game, Ron would tell me that it would be better for me had I just accepted the loss of a pawn and continued my attack on the king side. But let's see what happened later. Bishop goes to d7. Mistakes the computer, advantage goes back to me. My bishop goes to d2. I want to be able to control the knight on d5, meaning no matter where it goes, unless it goes back to b6, it is going to be checked by my bishop. Ron will place her queen on c4. And my bishop goes to c1. Why? Because now I'm going to lose the pawn at d4. Of course, not a good idea to send the bishop back and forth. I lost the tempo because of that, but you do what you need to do. Queen goes to c3 and attacks the rook. Me says the computer would rather have the knight go to c3. But what can I do? I need to protect it. Not so easy to protect it. I cannot just put my bishop on b2. I lose my bishop. Where can my rook go? It can go either to b1, but then it's going to be dangerous. Rook goes to c8. My bishop is in danger, so I decided to put it on a2, and this is what the computer thought it was the best, because when the rook now goes to c8, at least my bishop on c2 is safe, but it cannot move. Oh, it can move. I really need to tell you that when the game was played, I thought that my bishop on c1 was in danger, but it's defended twice, both by the queen and by the rook. This is a miscalculation I did, but let's see how the game went. My rook goes to f3 to attack the queen and hopefully have the queen go away. Blunders is the computer. Until here, you see, I was more or less in a balanced position. I even was 0.20 ahead. Queen goes to C, and now black is up by more than 3 points, 3.17. Queen goes to C4 and attacks my rook on A2. Rook goes to B3. No, in fact, I played the other one. Rook goes from F3 to B3 and covers my rook. Knight goes to C3. And now really there is a fog. Both my rook on A2 and my queen on D1 are in danger, and I don't see how they can cover each other. Not only that, my queen cannot go and cover the rook, so I'm not losing just an exchange. I'm going to lose the entire rook. What can I do? Minimize damage, so I take the knight and queen takes rook. So instead of losing the entire rook, I only lose an exchange. But my situation is not so good any longer, especially from the moment I move my rook to f3. You see that my bishop on c2 is attacked twice and defended twice, but if it moves, my bishop on c1 is lost. My rook on a2 is quite constrained. What can I do? Let me enter my knight in the game, because really it was grim on h3. And I send it back to f2. What I started thinking now, is it possible to trap black's queen somehow? Not so easy. I cannot put my bishop on b2. I lose my bishop on c2. I don't know if I could put it on d2. But let's see. Queen goes to c4, attacks my rook once again. And now my rook is in a very difficult case. Of course, I can send it to b2 like the computer suggests, but then my pawn on a3 is lost, and I'm going. My rook on b2 is not in a good shape. It's good. If it goes anywhere other than b2, I lose my bishop. If it goes to a2, it goes actually anywhere other than a2, I lose my bishop. Then then black can take my bishop, take it back, and my situation becomes really very nasty. Then they can take the pawn on d4. That is why I decided to take a chance and see if it is possible to surround the white queen. If the white queen takes my rook, if it's possible for me to surround the queen and have it nowhere to go. The queen will take my rook, and that's what I was thinking. Any chance now that I can encircle the queen? And I almost did it. My bishop goes to b3. Look at that. The black queen cannot go to a3, b3, cannot go b2, c2, d2, e2, f2, g2. All these squares are covered. But unfortunately, the black queen has just one square to go. In fact, it is two squares to be more exact. A1 and B1 can only go to the first rank. It goes to the first rank, A1. My queen goes to D2. But by now, my game is very low. You see, I'm already minus 7.06. Queen goes to D4 check. King goes to F1. Rook goes to C1 check. Queen takes it, we change. And now black takes my knight. We finished the first 30 moves, and it is very bad, because I'm down by 8.79, and the material-wise, I'm down by 9 pawns, meaning by a queen, if you add them up. My king will go to G1 to answer the check. At that time, I need to tell you that I didn't even see I was so much overwhelmed by how bad was my position. I moved my queen to c7, and Ron told me that it's illegal move, and so I moved my king to g1, which means I also lose my bishop. Wonderful. And my queen goes to c7. I'm minus 10.9. I'm desperately hoping for a miracle, let's to put it mildly. Queen goes to e3 check. King goes to f1. Queen go, and now let me tell you what I would do if it was not a check or if my turn was to move. I would try for the perpetual. Queen goes to b8 check, king goes to e7, and queen goes to d6 check. There is a perpetual. So if Ron was not careful, I might end like that. I had a very slim chance for a perpetual if my opponent made a mistake. But no, she did not. She takes my pawn on f4 and checks. King goes to e2, and she cannot take the pawn on e5. At the time, I was scared that the checks would continue not only with the queen. Well, clearly the queen cannot take the pawn on e5, but has other squares to go. But also checks would come with the bishop. The dark-colored bishop might check from quite a few squares. That's why by putting it on e2, I made sure that none of the two bishops can check me. But Ron saw something else, which I didn't see then. Checks from c4. What is the point behind that? If I don't want to lose my queen, I need to exchange queens. At the moment I exchange queens, my opponent has a rook and two bishops extra and plus tons of pawns. At that point, I was down 10.3. I didn't know, of course, exactly how much down I was, but I resigned. Congratulations to Ron. She would go on to win all of her games and get the first place in the under the 1700 section. And I feel very happy for her and wish her a great chess future. But it's time now to do the review. Well, it's not so pleasant to do a review if you lose a game, especially the way I lost it. Let's see how it was. Until my 22nd move, when I moved my rook from f1 to f3 to attack the queen, I was doing okay. Even I had a slight advantage. But from that on, from move number 22, it was a disaster going downhill all the way. But let's look at the review. What does the computer have to say? The computer gives me 74.7 percentage and Ron has 84.9. How well did we play? The computer may want to be flattering, but it cannot give me anything better than 1650, which is just a little bit better than my rating. And how about Ron? She got 2250. That is way above her 1400s. I'm not sure if she played that well, but she definitely played very, very well. And let's go to the various categories. None of us had brilliancies. Each of us had one great move, 14 best for Ron, 12 for me, 5 excellent each of us, 4 good for me, 1 for Ron, 4 book moves for each of us, inaccuracies. 4 for Ron, 2 for me, 2 mistakes each of us, 3 misses for Ron, 2 for me, and I had a couple of blunders. This concludes my coverage of the second round. And I start the tournament with 1 win and 1 loss. But since both of my opponents had ratings below me, well, not so good result. But before I conclude, how do I feel losing to a lower rated opponent, especially Ron is a school child? In chess, it's very common for small children to play extremely well. And personally, when I lose, first of all, I always do my best to win, and I'm always happy when I win. But if I lose to a child, at least a consolation prize is that this encourages a young talent to continue and excel. I hope her performance at the Connecticut Open will encourage Ron to do even better in the future. But the tournament is still going on. There are 2 more rounds to go. We'll see them in the next videos. I am Harry Lasaniziris. This is my YouTube channel, Greco Chess. ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for the viewers, the subscribers, the likes, the positive comments. For now, goodbye.